Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Congressman Tim Burchett. Congressman, thank you so much for coming on again.
Thank you for having me on, ma'am. I really enjoy this.
I always appreciate your perspective, especially when it's a busy week, just like it was on this one. The House passed a continuing resolution to avert a government shutdown on Tuesday. And the night before the vote, you said you were unsure of which way you were going. You were going to pray on it. You announced on Twitter or you explained rather, the reason why you decided to support it. You voted yes. You said you spoke with President Donald Trump directly and you addressed your concerns with him there. So talk to us about that conversation and what eventually made you get off the fence.
First of all, it's the very first time since I've been in office that we've actually voted to decrease the size of government, albeit very small, but by Tennessee standards, $1 billion is a lot of money, and it was $6 or $7 billion less that we are spending. Also, if you got something, if you understand the laws of physics, to make something go backwards, it has to get to a point where it stops, and the reality is that this stopped, and we stopped it, and now we're given an opportunity to go backwards, and that's what I hope it will do. And I expressed my concerns about the waste, fraud, and abuse that I thought was at the Pentagon, and that I don't like it every time that we've audited them 8 times, I think, and they've never even passed an audit. Dadgummit, they don't even complete the audit. And they're arrogant, and there is so much I feel like that we could get to over there, and there's so much money being lost. At one point, we were told that they could not account for $500 billion, and that's an aircraft carrier that they can't account for. Granted, some of it goes into black projects, I'm sure, and but some of it, I believe, is just being taken, just like it is in other parts of the government. And I expressed those concerns to the president, and he assured me that he was going to get to the bottom of it. And to be truthful with you, he's never lied to me. President Trump has always been very truthful to me, and I'm giving him every opportunity not to. And this is one of those. And if he chooses to go in another direction, then I guess I will as well. But the point is, we reduce the size of government, and that's an opportunity for us, I think.
Congressman, one thing I appreciate about you is you always go on X. You're always filming a video, explaining your position, saying where you need to compromise, why you voted a certain way. And as you know, I don't need to tell you, this CR is a $13 billion cut to non-defense spending, a $6 billion increase in defense spending. You're particularly taking beef with Pentagon spending. You said you also spoke with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. What was that conversation like, and where do you want to see him direct some cuts?
Oh, that was a lengthy conversation I had with him and the speaker. That's another reason I like this speaker. He doesn't put me off. He gets to the meat of the issue, and he got the head man on the phone with me, and we had a conversation just about those things that I reiterated with President Trump. But and unless you have a cohesive unit there between Pete Hegseth and President Donald Trump, these things would not occur. And he agreed with me that there was considerable waste at the Pentagon, and that we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to end a lot of the crazy programs that they were involved with. I mean, case in point, we're in the business of building aircraft carriers, and we know the future wars are not going to be fought like they have in the past. My dad's war, the Second World War, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. He enlisted in the Marine Corps, and America's industrial might builds it up our Navy, and the Marines go all the way across the Pacific, and the Army does too. But it's not going to work like that in the future. It's, we're not going to take 6 months to do something. It's going to be instantaneous. And too many times these projects are built in people's districts just because they're powerful. And the truth is that a lot of them are mothballed or just put in storage the day they're built. And that is a complete waste. And it is a mistrust and rightfully so, of our federal government. So again, those are the kind of things I talked to him about. and he agreed with me that we were going to get to the bottom of those things, and we were going to stop the waste at the Pentagon, and that his goal was for them to pass an audit.
And you felt good enough to support it. So that went through. The House avoided the shutdown. Now the ball is in the Senate's court. And I've had these conversations time and time again in the past couple of years. There's a looming government shutdown. Before it was with a Democrat president. Now it's with a Republican president. The ball's in the Senate's court. Republicans need some Democrats to come on board with them to get over that filibuster. Senator John Fetterman, he's a Democrat. He said he's going to support it. A Republican, Senator Rand Paul, said he will not support it. Based on what you're seeing, based on your conversations you're having with lawmakers, what does it look like? Do you think that the government's going to shut down in just a few days?
Well, if we do have a shutdown, it's all on the Democrats. It's not on the Republicans, because the reality is this is very similar to the budget that Pelosi and Schumer passed before, and people are angry that we're not putting the DOGE cuts in there. Well, legally you can't. This is not the mechanism to do that. That has to come later. And that was another agreement I got with President Trump, that we were going to start doing that, because currently we really don't even have a mechanism. Nobody's actively, unless just individually you want to put a bill in that does what DOGE did. So I would hope the Democrats would have some sense. It's kind of funny out in the past, when we didn't join with them on some of these crazy spending sprees they go on, they accuse us of trying to shut the government down. And now, in effect, they're doing the exact same thing when it's very obvious that their goal is to shut the government down and to blame it on Donald Trump because of their hatred of him. And it's ridiculous.
And I don't need to tell you, I don't need to tell our viewers what a government shutdown would do to millions of federal workers and people like veterans and things like that. But you haven't supported continuing resolutions in the past. You're supporting this now. Isn't a continuing resolution kicking the can down the road? Can we ever see, or will we see, a more permanent solution?
Yeah, I believe it will. And I believe this is the opportunity we have. I think that what's happened is that our former leadership did kick that can down the road, and this was they weren't minding the store, so to speak. And I think you've got a speaker in Mike Johnson and a president in Donald Trump that understands that, and understands to get this economy going, we have to have the full faith of the public in it, consumer confidence. And I believe you'll see that, because we are working towards passing a budget. And that is something that is openly talked about in committee. It's not something they allow the budget chairman to get up and talk about for 1 minute in conference. We have almost the whole conference meeting is debating on how to go about passing a budget, something that has not been done in 30 years. So yeah, I think we're moving in the right direction.
Congressman, you sit on the DOGE subcommittee. One of your issues with this continuing resolution is that it increases defense spending. Is that something you would want Elon Musk and DOGE to work on next?
100%. I suspect that in the Department of Education, people are going to be astounded and shocked at the amount of waste, abuse, and fraud that are going on there. And I'm looking forward to them going through that. I had a nice conversation with Elon last week, or week before. They're all running together. I apologize. But anyway, he said that is on their goal next. And so I look forward to seeing that.
Do you have any insight into what exactly is that waste, fraud, and abuse in the Department of Defense, in the Department of Education?
Yeah, well, first of all, there's not one bureaucrat in Washington that's taught a kid how to read, write, or do arithmetic in Tennessee. I can tell you that. And if you take the average, they give about 10% to the state education funds or what have you, but they tie incredible strings to it. And the states do it because they're addicted to that money. And what will end up happening is that money will be sent to the straight to the states, and the state and local elected officials will be the ones that address it, not some bureaucrat in Washington, some one size fits all. And two, we're having a hard time finding out exactly what those people do at the Department of Education. It's such a bureaucratic nightmare. It's a DEI drain, really, and it's become a nightmare to the taxpayers. So I'm looking forward to that. As far as the Defense Department goes, you just we are moving away from expensive aircraft, manned aircraft, because of drone technology. They can literally put a 300 or 400 of these small drones in the air, and there's we have no way to get through that, and it'd be suicide for our pilots. So I think we're going to move away from piloted aircraft, move into more to drone type situation. There'll still be a need for pilots, and there'll still be a need for boots on the ground. But with this new technology, I think we better be aware of it, or we will get, if there's ever a conflict, we will suffer some very brutal consequences.
Congressman, when you were explaining why you voted for this CR, you also said that this didn't touch Medicare, didn't touch Medicaid, didn't touch Social Security. Republicans have said we're not touching any of those entitlements. President Trump himself said I'm not touching Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. But there is waste, fraud, and abuse, and I want to get to the bottom of that. Elon Musk said in an interview with Larry Kudlow on Fox Business this: entitlement spending, quote, is the big one to eliminate, and the government spends anywhere from $500 to $700 billion on them. I am curious. I know Republicans want serious cuts to be made, but is there $500 to $700 billion of abuse, of waste, of fraud when it comes to these entitlements?
I think we should allow them every opportunity to go for that. I remember when Reagan was in office, and there was a delivery system for poor folks, and it was costing $1 for every dollar to go into it. And he eliminated that delivery system and made it efficient. And the Democrats said, oh, he cut that program in half for poor people. No, he didn't. He just cut out all your bureaucratic friends that were in some do nothing job, and that's what he's going to go after. And I think people ought to be mad that they're allowed to do that, but they ought to be glad that they're going to free up some money for those people that are truly deserving of it.
I feel really lucky in my role. I get to talk to people like you, members of Congress from both sides of the aisle, and I've asked their perspective on Elon Musk, and the answers I've gotten have ranged from everything from he's a genius, he's great outside perspective, he's recklessly cutting, he's really the shadow president. Where do you fall? What do you make of Elon Musk?
I think he's a good advisor. He's got nothing to gain and everything to lose from this. I like him. I asked him personally. I said, look, here's the deal. I told him I'm a Christian. I'm not a very good one. I know what my drive is for. My wife and daughter. I said, why are you doing this? And it was a very unique, I guess you could say, response. And he said, honestly, Tim, I just saw all the corruption and people doing without. And he said, and he thought about his kids, and of course he has a heck of a lot of kids, and where this country was going for them, and he wanted to change the course of it, and I think he's done it. I think the people that are squealing the loudest, though, are the ones that are. You're probably going to see some people in Washington and possibly some people in Congress in handcuffs over some of this stuff because of the money and the graft, and they think they're slick, and that's not. They can't. There's no paper trail, but there's a trail. There's a trail for every dollar. And Elon Musk has got a team together, and that's why they're squealing the most. Because you'd think they want to get rid of the waste and abuse so that they could free up the money to give to those people that are deserving of it, not the other way around. And unfortunately, that's what they're doing.
Who do you think are some of these people that are going to get in legal trouble? Are they people we know? Are they lawmakers, or are they more people who work in private industries? I mean, what does that look like?
No, I think you're going to see some bureaucrats get in trouble, but I think you're ultimately going to see some lawmakers, because their families, the way they set up these NGOs is you get a rich person to put in $1 million in something, and then it has some great name, and then some unelected bureaucrat puts maybe $1 billion in their fund, and of our tax dollars, and then it flows in a circuitous route back to Washington, to those same politicians, to their campaigns, and possibly just straight to their back pocket if they have a family member that works there.
Congressman, I obviously have to ask, do you have any names off the top of your head of those types of people, of those lawmakers?
I have my suspicions, and it could possibly be in both parties, but I'll leave it. I'll let that to the elected, I'll let that to law enforcement.
Well, if that ever pans out, I'm definitely having you back on. I always want to have you on, but I do want to talk about something else. Speaking of transparency, speaking of you being a straight shooter, you just introduced a bill to, quote, prohibit stock trading and ownership by members of Congress and their spouses and dependent children. Can you talk to us about why you feel that this legislation is necessary?
Yeah, I think it's very necessary. People don't trust Washington for good reason. We're crooked as a dog's leg. If you saw where when President Biden gave away our missile defense system, sent it to Ukraine, then we replenished our missile defense system. We had to rebuild it, of course, immediately. And that was through a no-bid contract. And that stock went up considerably at that time, from what I remember. And as it turns out, I believe that members of both parties own stock in that company, and some of them had bought it just weeks prior to the president announcing that decision. Are they clairvoyant or are they crooked? You know, I have my suspicions, but I just think it's important for people to have trust in us. I have a $13,000 portfolio in a mutual fund. My buddy Tommy Seiler manages it for me, and he's done real well with it. I think it was $11,000 last year, so I'm pretty pleased with it. But I'm not involved in individual stock trades, and I think it's wrong. I think when you it's an incredible honor to be in Congress. There's more people that play professional baseball than have served in the United States Congress. And I think that we ought to treat it as such. And if some people have to sacrifice, some don't. But I think that the public needs to know that, and it needs to be very clear and transparent.
Congressman, I
would encourage people to go on a website, on a Twitter or X. It's called Unusual Whales, like the mammal that swims in the sea. And it shows the Congress people and some of their trades, and it's very alarming to me.
Congressman, based on the fact that you introduced this legislation, I don't think you think that your colleagues are clairvoyant. But what have your conversations with your colleagues been like? Do you have bipartisan support? Because I've heard from both sides of the aisle, lawmakers saying that they would want to prohibit stock trading. Also, I can imagine if you're making a lot of money, you wouldn't want this to go into effect. So what have those conversations been like?
Well, I've been warned off of it. You know, I've been told to quit talking about stuff like this by some of our leadership. And I said, well, you know, it's the truth though, right? And they said, well, yeah, but some members of leadership aren't real happy about when I talk about things like this. So do I think it'll go anywhere? No, neither party will let it. If they do, they'll pass it in the House and sit on in the Senate, or do a combination thereof. I just don't see it happening.
And why do you think not? Why is leadership calling you off? Are they the ones that are trading?
Don't know. I don't know. I don't think our leadership is. I don't think Mike Johnson is. But I think you've got some people behind the scenes that are doing a lot of stock trading. It's public record. Like I said, go on Unusual Whales. You can, and everybody gripes about Pelosi, and granted, her trades are, as my daughter would say, ginormous, and she does appear to be clairvoyant sometimes, but she's not even in the top 10.
Well, Congressman, I am definitely going to look further into this. I appreciate our conversations per usual. I hope we can have many more of them. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, ma'am. It's always a pleasure.